All right, well, welcome. I'm the Executive Director for Waterloo Human Rights Commission, Abraham L. Funchess Jr. And today we want to welcome you to another episode of Hot Mississippi Minute for the Waterloo Human Rights Commission. Well, today I want to talk to you a little bit about the difference between service animals and emotional care animals. And this deals primarily with the Fair Housing Act and the American Disabilities Act. A lot of people sometimes ask questions as to whether or not landlords can, charge a pet deposit and other fees associated with their animal. And sometimes individuals have animals that are Rottweilers, and they want to keep their animals within the domicile. And sometimes the landlords give them a tough time about that. So we're hoping that today we can provide a little more clarity based on what the law seems to state, as well as Iowa law, landlord-tenant law here in the state of Iowa, concerning service animals and companion animals. Well, first of all, we just want you to know that a service animal typically is a dog. These dogs are highly trained, recognized as training animals that have been given a specific task to help someone with a particular functionality, sometimes because of a disability that has been incurred, whether it be through military service or some other mishap, dealing with everyday life. They need the requirement of a service animal to support them throughout their daily activities going forward. Well, everybody can relate to that because everybody knows somebody who needs those kinds of supports when they have endured a disability. Typically, by the way, when you think of companion animals, that is for a mental health issue. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But typically for the service animal, and Iowa Code 216C talks a little bit about this. These are animals that are specially trained at a recognized training facility to assist a person with a disability, whether described as a service dog, support dog, an independence dog, or otherwise. And, it goes on and on and on. But typically these animals don't harm anybody, they don't bother anybody. Their whole functionality is to provide support for the specific disability outlined by the healthcare professional for the person who owns or has assistance from the dog, and it's typically a dog. Some cases it's a miniature horse, but obviously we haven't really seen miniature horses anywhere around. So typically we think of that service dog, a German Shepherd, maybe some other dog, but it's a dog typically. Now the companion animal, on the other hand, is typically a small animal that provides companionship for the person who needs the companion animal. They too typically get support from the healthcare professional, indicating that they need the service animal in their proximity to help support them, whatever the case is. But there are some distinct differences, according to the law, with respect to where service animals go and where companion animals go. Companion animals, by the way, they're not limited to a dog. Oh, a companion animal can be a lizard, it can be a snake, it can be some other exotic animal. And so, you can imagine some landlords will have a cow, depending on what you're explaining about your companion animal. Service animals, by the way, they can go into public accommodations. It is not uncommon, perhaps you can attest to this, to see someone with a service animal go into a restaurant, for instance, or into public bathrooms. Again, those service animals by law can accompany the provider with that kind of support because this is a part of the American Disabilities Act as well as the Fair Housing Act. Now, when it comes to the companion animal, contrarily, you don't see companion animals going into public facilities. You can have the companion animal in your domicile, but you cannot necessarily take your companion animal into a restaurant public bathrooms, etc., etc. Again, remember the companion animal can be anything other than a dog. It can be a lizard, it can be a snake, it can be a monkey. Can you imagine taking a snake into a restaurant and saying, "This is my companion animal"? Can you imagine going into a public restroom, but you have a little monkey riding your neck, as your companion animal? It creates, as you can imagine, a lot of frustration for a lot of different people who will be impacted. I just recently had someone come to me, and they have what appears to be a Rottweiler as a pet. And there's a new owner that has taken over the domicile, and the new owner is stipulating that they need to get rid of this pet. Well, first of all, there are a few things that have to be asked in order to determine whether the landlord has a right to stipulate that this person, the tenant, needs to get rid of the pet. Is it a service animal? That's the first thing. Is it a service animal? Do you need this service animal to help you with any impairment, any physical disability or something like that, that can be delineated by a healthcare professional? Well, if the answer is no to that, then it raises the question whether or not the service animal, is perceived to be dangerous. And in this particular case, the service animal, especially if it's a Rottweiler that you typically tie up on the outside of the domicile and is barking at passers go by, well, that person who owns that particular dog, who cannot vouch for the fact that it is in fact a service animal, if you cannot provide documentation from a healthcare professional that this is a service animal that is safe, for one thing, then you can't have, the landlord has a right to say that you can't have that dog on the premises. A lot of times landlords have no pet policies, but the no pet policy is not going to restrict anyone who has a bona fide disability from taking their service animal into the domicile, because a tenant who has a service animal is protected by the Fair Housing Act and the American Disabilities Act. So you have the law on your side. Let me just read through some of these that comes basically right from the law, so that I might be able to help clarify anything that I might be overlooking at the moment. Here are two conditions, by the way, that we want to go back to now. Does the person requesting the animal indeed have a diagnosed disability, that impacts major life activities? That's one of the first stipulations. Two, does the person requesting the animal have a disability-related need for it? And will the animal assist, perform tasks, or perform services for the disabled person? These are two critical characteristics, conditions for the service animal. And landlords have rights too. Now, as we've said, the Federal Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act provide reasonable accommodations to accommodate someone, even if you have a no pet policy in the domicile. And here are a few key points for landlords to know. Even if a landlord has a no pet policy in place, the law does not consider service animals as pets. If it's a bona fide service animal, that's not a pet, madam, sir. And therefore, the service animal is exempt from such a restriction. Two, service animals are allowed anywhere a person would go, including food areas that would normally restrict an animal's presence. Three, landlords cannot charge. And I've run into a lot of situations where people are being charged pet deposits and this kind of thing. If the animal is a service animal, you cannot charge a pet deposit. So landlords cannot charge a pet deposit or a pet fee for service animals. However, the tenant is liable for any damages that the service animal may cause. Let's say 4, landlords can require written verification from the tenant's health provider that they are disabled but cannot ask for any specifics about the disability. So that's one of your rights, landlords. You have the right to require written verification attesting to the fact that this particular tenant definitely needs the service animal. Landlords can require written verification from the tenant's health care provider that the service animal is needed. That's another big plus for the landlord. Landlords can request copies of the animal's health records to prove the animal is in good health, parasite-free, and immunized, vaccinated, because clearly, landlords, you have a responsibility to other persons in the domicile or in the vicinity. So, of course, the animal must be in good health. As we said, service animals are typically well-trained in order to help a person carry out a specific functionality in their daily activities, but they should also, of course, be in good health as well. And then landlords can write warnings or even evict a tenant with a service animal if the animal is disturbing others, posing a threat to others, or causing considerable damage to property. And so, there are a few differences there that I've kind of delineated today in this Hot Mississippi Minute about some of the features of a service animal versus maybe some of the features of a companion animal. We'll spend some more time the next time talking a little bit more about the companion animal. But with respect to the service animal, no pet fees, no charges, for the service animal. You are covered, tenant, by the Fair Housing Act and the American Disabilities Act. That service animal can accompany you anywhere as long as it's providing the service that it's been trained to provide. All right, I hope that you find this very, very helpful. Again, this is Abraham L. Funchess, Waterloo Human Rights Director, and this is a Hot Mississippi Minute.